Hello, everybody. This is Christina Fasonic, broadcasting live from Wheeling, West Virginia on this beautiful evening in June. Tonight, I'm super excited about our guest. I'm always excited, but I'm especially excited about this next guest because when I first met Matt, which was probably about, I think, 2011 at the Indiana University of Pennsylvania, when we were doing a panel together on Northern Appalachian culture, everything he said, I wish I would have written. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. I want to bring my co-host, Damian Dressick, on. Hello, Damian.
Good evening, Christina. How are you in Wheeling, West Virginia tonight?
I'm always just as fantastic as forever. Wheeling is always good. No complaints. How are you? I
am fine, thank you. As you can see, I'm indoors.
Yes.
We do not have spectacular weather.
Oh.
We've had thunder showers and gray skies.
I could use some rain, though. But, you know, the thing is, you are going to age so well. You'll be like 90 years old and have this beautiful skin, and I'll be all like tan, wrinkly because I spend so much time out in the sun, but I can't help it. You know, it's the best thing about it, being outside.
Well, I have a convertible vehicle. So perhaps, you know, yeah.
Yeah, well, if the sun doesn't get you, the wind will. So are we ready to introduce our writer tonight?
I think we are ready to introduce our writer. Now, you're going to introduce our writer tonight, but I also met Matt at IUP. We taught there together.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And he was very nice.
Yes, he's very nice. So let me tell our audience a little bit more about him other than our personal anecdotes. In Matt's bio, he says that he wandered away from his birthplace in southwestern Pennsylvania to live in the high desert of southern Arizona, then in the urban cultural center of Paris, France. Pulled by shared geographies of their home Appalachians, he and his wife returned to the Laurel Highlands, settled there, became unsettled, then settled again in northwestern Pennsylvania at the confluence of Appalachia and the Rust Belt. His essays have appeared in literary magazines across North America, with recent work appearing in the Fiddlehead, Gettysburg Review, and Best American Travel Writing 2018. He is the author of two books, the latest, Appalachia North, a memoir, which is an inquiry, they're both inquiry into exiles of self and region, precipitated by the curious cultural position of being from Northern Appalachia and by the difficult personal reckoning that comes in the aftermath of the diagnosis and treatment of a brain tumor. He teaches writing and literature at Allegheny College, serves as a visiting faculty member in the West Virginia Wesleyan Low Residency MFA program, and with his family divides time between Northwestern Pennsylvania and Prince Edward Island in Canada. It is from Matt, and I will bring him on. Hello, Matt.
Hey.
It's from you that I first learned the term Appalachia.
Oh, yeah, I think I made it up.
I think you did too. It is a brilliant term, and I think that speaks to something that we've all been talking about what is Appalachia? Can we, since the Appalachian Mountains run up into Canada, all the way down to Georgia, you know, and that whole swath, I mean, what is Appalachia? It's more the culture than the, you know, and how does it, yeah, you know, you wrote the book on it.
Well, that's right. Well, I mean, we're related to our rocks in the mountains that are from our rocks. But yeah, there's this cultural thing. And I think partly it comes from this exile. So I'm in Pennsylvania, too. Both of you guys have your locations on your tag, and I wish I did, too.
I copied that from Christina.
Smart.
The coolest
stuff. I'm a fast follower.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what I'm thinking about here is being Pennsylvanian and being Appalachian/Appalachian, which is something maybe we'll talk about later or not, is kind of weird. But that opens up the idea of recognizing the way other people have been exiled from their countries. Culturally, I'm thinking, because Appalachians are sort of thought of as outsiders to the rest of the country. And what I discovered in maritime Canada is very much the same way. And then I realized, hey, the mountains are there too. So I think there's space for at least some widening of the grouping in some way. Plus, they have red rocks, but they're supposed to be red. And when you grow up in coal mining country, you grow up with red rocks that aren't supposed to be red. And it's refreshing to be in a place where the rocks are red naturally instead of non-naturally.
I can identify with that. We should also say that you are running for office in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And that's a very big deal. And I think, I wanted to mention that before we had you read, because I feel a lot of times people talk about advocating for Appalachian people, and that people want to make the place better and work on the environment and all of those things. But it's a lot of talk and not a lot of action. So I appreciate that you've put that into action.
Thanks. Yeah, and sometimes I think part of there's many motivations perhaps, but one of the feedback. I don't know, it's probably on my end. One of those motivations is that often I think in politics we get in Appalachia the stereotype of what Appalachian is thought to be, and part of the reason why we suffer is that the people who represent us locally, sometimes locals actually often better. Sometimes you have an awesome mayor, like in Wheeling.
Yes, we have a great mayor.
Yeah. And but at the state level and then also at the federal level, you wind up having people representing you who just reinforce the stereotypes everybody has, and that's part of the motivation to run, is that we are more than we're made out to be. Also, the dude I'm running against said some things against poetry a number of years ago. There was a famous line where he questioned whether the state should offer financial aid to students studying poetry or other pre-Walmart majors. And I think that's the rallying cry for my campaign right there. Damien has given him the squint.
Could you tell us what district you're running in, Matt?
Yeah, so this is Pennsylvania District 6, Legislative District 6, which is in Northwestern Pennsylvania, Crawford County, and part of Erie County. There's two full townships and one part of township west of the city of Erie, but primarily it's Crawford County.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, we wish you luck.
Thanks. Cool.
All right. So are you ready to
ready
us? Oh, I should add before you go that book right there, Appalachia North, won the book award at the Writers' Conference of Northern Appalachia last year. And I used some blank
of the year.
Of the year, I'm sorry.
Book of the year, yes.
Right. I say the day.
Book of the hour.
Book of the hour. Book of the moment. Joie de vivre. Anyway, so we're going to bring Matt on, and thank you again for coming, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
You're finished.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to hop around in here a little bit and read a couple of different excerpts that will try to build a little bit of consistency. So I'm beginning on my parents' farm, which is in Indiana County, Pennsylvania. I was walking around on a beautiful, warm November day, sort of a strangely warm November day a couple of years ago. My trance soon ended, however, anger replacing wonder as I began to notice scraps of plastic tape strewn about like the worst kind of litter or vandalism. Knotted and clumped and tethered in the grasses and through the tree line that separates the farm from the neighboring Christmas tree plantation, neon orange plastic ribbon flapped in the breeze. Everywhere I saw survey tape, markers from a gas exploration company. Marcellus crews had been measuring, preparing, readying the land for mighty thumper trucks, dynamite charges, and other rumblings covered by the term seismic testing. They had been here, had walked the same route I walked, and not long ago. At the highest point of the farm that November day, I found slats of rough pine pounded into the prairie grass, into the farm's old cornfields my father had restored to nature a few years before, switching them from the interval of crops into the regular cover of primeval meadow. Each pine slat had black numbers magic markered across the top, together signaling where boxes should be placed, devices that would measure the vibrations of small explosions meant to create an artificial echoing eye that would gaze on the layers of Devonian deposition from the ancient Acadian mountains. The explosions would map out long ago seas, now turned gaseous and valuable. The plastic survey tape traced the waves of that ancient shoreline and signaled something simple. Dig here. The pine spike pulled free easily that day, straight up from the prairie. I windmilled it into the breeze-blown grasses. The pine spike flipped end over end and disappeared into the dry grasses, gone, futilely gone, because there were dozens more. Pine spikes and plastic survey tape commanding someone to thump here, dig here, all will be well here. I was surrounded by gunshots, the wind, the roads, 2 highways, bypasses around the farm and the town and Appalachia, asphalt rivers for the heavy rigs and thumper trucks and drilling crews, and money, at least maybe for a while. The wind still gentle, that last touch of autumn, that coming winter, the last one before I'd learn about my own seismic turmoil, that period when prairie grasses are dry enough to spark and burn. Let me put it this way. Narrative suggests that I am supposed to live in the wake of my personal crisis along a Sherald Strayed wild sort of arc, where I'm faced with this setback and do something. Maybe I hike a trail. No. Maybe I try to reignite my failed professional golf career. Maybe, but probably no. Maybe I just use the tumor as its own sort of metaphorical journey and come out on the other side transformed and different, certainly better. But the problem of brain tumors and narrative resolution, or at least the problem of my own brain tumor, is that resolution isn't possible. It's there in my head, will be forever. It's probably dead, so there's a triumph, but it's not gone. And I'm still the same person, just one with new neurological issues that bug the hell out of me. Sometimes my hands tremble. Often my left eye aches when I've been exerting myself or even just reading too much. Some days I'm just off, dropping shit and unable to make 3-foot putts on the golf course. When I look in the mirror, my left eyelid droops noticeably. I do not like what I see. And maybe this is why the geography of my home Appalachia can sometimes seem too hard to bear. There's too much undermining, literal and figurative, too many foundations at risk because things have been scooped out below. Things subside, but not in a good way, more like the way foundations crumble and buckle as the earth falls into abandoned coal mines. That erosion is unintentional, unnatural. And for me, my memories of my home are always overlaid with this, a new palimpsest of malady and fear. Worse, my sense of Northwestern Pennsylvania is forever linked to the moment I heard my cell phone ring and I listened to a doctor explain something unreachable, impossible, dire. It is linked to knowing that as I lay etherized for 8 hours, my wife sat in a polyester and vinyl waiting room, her phone ringing and a nurse intoning everything is going well, and they're closing now, and you can see him in the ICU. It is linked to a day that began before dawn in a converted convent, now a hotel in a neighborhood of Pittsburgh, when we walked out into the cool March air, first hints of spring in the blooming cherry trees, just a distant hum of traffic, gleaming neon lights atop the U.S. Steel building and the Highmark Health Insurance building, then on to the washed-out lights of the anxious registration room. I lay all morning in pre-op, watching other patients roll out for their surgeries, 7 hours pretending to be hale, healthy, and joking, and somehow apparently happy, dressed in a worn hospital gown, socks with rubber grippers on the soles, watching Top Gear on my iPad, eventually with an IV jabbed in each hand. How could I bear to hear over and over again in memory the great cheerfulness of the OR nurse, the anesthesiology intern who came to roll me away, understanding also how leaving meant a gaping emptiness for my wife, marked only by the clunking sound of hospital bed rails being locked into place, the oomph of 2 women pushing the bed away, and the bed rolling away, gone. My wife left, not knowing what or who would return. How then do we triangulate ourselves? How do we find the coordinates of ourselves, our regions, our sense of who and what and where we come from. Margins are in flux, coordinates rendered easily in the form of degrees, seconds, minutes. These terms also carrying the weight of multiplicity and in the end agreed upon measurements that signify nothing beyond what we make of them. I am moved to find the corners of Northern Appalachia, just as I am moved to contain my sense of recovery within the framework of moments. These desires are driven by falsity, clear enough on the ground of Northern Appalachia. There is no difference between here and there, no stability to the line itself, only surfaces that have been worn, shaped, and wrought by the scraping away of so many glacial elements, real and imagined. What does not change is the rock, the substrate. No, it changes too, as rock is a process, the compressed dust of a galactic Big Bang, folded, cut, morphed, spewed, and laid. In Appalachia, the nation has decided that our core is extractive industry, that the relationship to our geology, to our actual substrate, is one of profit and removal. That's a bad relationship, one always fraught and ready to collapse. That's a relationship defined only by its very end. There can be no reclamation when you destroy your substance. Thus, I discard that core, recognizing instead that the not mountains of Appalachia are my bedrock, that erosion is just another way to shape stone into sculpture. My geology matters, makes me who I am, and I commit myself to reconciling with a relationship delivered to me already broken. The rocks forgive. The rocks remain. My way of looking at them and at myself may be unsettled, but is at the very least ready. Near the highest point on the farm, I walked past one of several new gas wells recently tapped into the ground as wellhead prices climbed, this one tucked into a stand of trees, the loss of which my father particularly lamented. At one time, my wife and I had hoped to build a house there, before we learned we'd both lose the jobs we'd found in the Laurel Highlands. She, because her private school decided French wasn't worthwhile anymore, informing her of that coming loss while she was 7 months pregnant with our first child, and me because the university where I worked decided to hire in my field, but couldn't see past the taint of my non-tenure track status. For my father, I believe losing this building site was the greatest insult. With it went any hope for grandchildren growing up on the farm, or a summer cabin on the back 40, or even just the maintenance of the woods my father has walked for decades. Throughout these woods, small chunks of sandstone and shale have worked their way to the surface over time. I found a suitable specimen, then chucked the rock at the brine tank, which rang dully, unsatisfying, so unlike a bell. After cutting through the woods past the old tree stand where I shot my first and only deer, I emerged into the back field and paused to listen, first to the chatter of winter birds, then to the background noise of the two major highways visible from the farm. Nowhere save the now lost building spots could I escape the sound of rushing cars. I counted the structures on the horizon, 1 coal-fired power plant, 3 cell towers, and at least half a dozen radio towers. My mood was souring, some kind of self-righteous indignation mounting even before I considered the string of high-power transmission lines that cut diagonally through the center of the upper fields, carrying electricity from the coal-fired plant on the horizon to the grid. The farm functions as a conduit, part of the superhighway network that digs up, burns, and sends away the transformed landscape of our homes to light lamps and cook microwave popcorn. It was in this mood that I found the pine stakes, and it was in this mood that I pinwheeled one of them into the high grasses. We all carry scars. I have many from childhood falls, and they grow with me. I carry a bald streak in the front of my hairline from when I hit my head on the electric meter outside of John's house in 3rd grade, his mother the nurse, their white porcelain sink splashed red as I bled, freshly scarred forever. Then there's the divot on my knee when I wrecked my bike, and when later that night I awoke to see the terrifying omen of a bat flying around the ceiling of my room. The hairline traces of the 3 broken arms I earned while in elementary school, each a memento of healed fractures clearly visible on x-rays. The screws now in my skull, which airport agents can see each time I walk through security. The headaches. The perpetually thinner hair on the left side of my head where radiation damaged follicles as it destroyed my tumor. The drooping of my left eyelid as I tire. The new philosophy of scarring. The antibodies we develop after a cold. Our bodies record everything that threatens, or maybe the body is actually defined by the things that threaten it. We become us by the way we heal from damage, or better put, we become a new self constantly by stacking on the history of our own injury. We are made in how we struggle against the difficulty of living. We are soft and vulnerable, but somehow resilient, not bouncing back, but forward. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Matt. That was great. Christina, we'd love to hear what you've got to say, but you're muted.
Yes, I am. That was excellent, Matt. I have, of course, read your book, and I actually started a fire with a blank page from your book.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Nothing else would do. But that's the first time I've heard you read from it, because every chance I've had to work the event. So it's nice to hear your voice and the intonation and the cadence of how you read it. It's a wonderful, wonderful book.
Thanks. You know, I spent a whole bunch of time finding a new excerpt to read because I thought Christina has heard me read from this book so many times before that I don't want to bore her. So, well.
I did hear you read when you came to Wheeling, though, for
lunch. Right.
I do, but I think it was a different excerpt, though. So you did good. But thank you so much, and thank you for trying to identify what is special and what is unique, but what is the same as here in Northern Appalachia. And I think as we continue to grow, like with the work that we're doing with the conference and other things, we'll get a better sense of that.
Yeah, I agree.
And the community that we're building, I think, is the best part of all of it.
Yeah, I think so, because, there's just this sense, like we were talking about before I was reading, of disconnection, which certainly for someone who grew up in Pennsylvania, you feel completely divorced from the rest of the region, even though you get the inkling that nobody else wants to include you in their region. So you're not even a Pittsburgher when you grow up outside of Pittsburgh. But you're definitely not Eastern Pennsylvania. You're not Midwestern. And so there's that weird moment when you suddenly realize you're Appalachian, but then you don't quite fit. And so what I love about this Writers' Conference of Northern Appalachia is that all the misfits recognize how they fit together as misfits, and that we are part of something bigger, but we're also our own thing at the same time. And that's really been gratifying to me, to see that community of writers across West Virginia and Pennsylvania, a little bit in New York. We need some of that southern tier New York. Ohio definitely has been involved. Yeah. Good stuff.
And Maryland. We can't forget about that.
Maryland. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it has been great getting to know everybody. And you're right. When we were at the conference last year, I think the most common thing that people said was, I feel at home with these people.
Yeah.
And what an amazing thing that is.
Absolutely. Well, and I want to throw on to that too, and I like that we're just talking about the region right now, but growing up in Pennsylvania, I think you sort of are taught that you're not part of West Virginia, which geographically is true, but like there's a huge separation. But spending time in West Virginia for me was like this total life-giving experience. When I did graduate work down there, that's when I really started to realize that I was part of the region. And as much as there is an exile being for Northern Appalachia, I also felt immediately welcomed into the broader region of Appalachia, including all the way across West Virginia and beyond. And that was also really heartwarming for me, is to suddenly feel at home there. So it's kind of a double home. I personally don't feel an antagonism between Northern and other parts, which I think is a great part of Appalachians. It has its subsets, but we're also kind of united as a subset of America.
I don't know, Matt. It could just be because you're very personable.
Maybe, I don't know. Or maybe I don't detect animus when it's directed my way. I just think everybody likes me.
You know what? That would be a great attribute to have.
Yeah.
It's like everybody could absolutely detest you, but how would you know? Because you just can't detect it.
I can tell you, if you want to know that some people hate you just for existing, run for office.
Oh, I bet. I've been following some of that, Matt. Hopefully it's worthwhile.
I hope so, too. Yeah, we don't need to talk about that.
All right. Well, thank you again. Hey, Damien, who's next on the show on Thursday?
Who's next? Oh goodness, I'm on the wrong computer. You've caught me out.
Hold on. I got this.
Okay, wait. Who?
I had the notes up, and then I turned it down, and I'll put it back up.
Is it Barbara?
I think so.
I want to say. I'm not sure. But definitely, while you look for that, I definitely noticed that I lived in Colorado.
Yeah, it's James Charles.
It's James. Then it's Barbara, because I thought Barbara was also a Monday. That's right. That's right. Yeah. We moved him. He's moved. Yes, James.
Yes, we had to move him. So thank you again, Matt, and we hope all of you will join us on Thursday to hear from James Charlesworth, who is also serves on the Writers' Conference of Northern Appalachia Planning Committee. And so maybe he'll have some nice things to say about all the work we've been doing.
Because we're another Pennsylvania
very good writer.
And another Pennsylvanian, that's right. Yeah. I am the token West Virginian around here. Anyways, and proud to be so. Thank you again, Matt. We hope to see each other in person soon whenever this is over.
And best of luck in November. Anybody who's made that statement that you gave us earlier about the defunding of universities with their free Walmart majors, I don't think they perhaps should have a very good place in government. I can't see that. Can't feature that. All right. Best of luck. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Good night.
Good night. See you on Thursday.
Thursday.